Hello everyone, I am back with another video. Today I'll be doing a bit of a mid-year check-in with 2023 pickups. I don't do these videos as often as I used to, but this year more than any in recent memory, I've really been picking up a lot of in-the-year of release games. I've been beating those. In prior years I tend to pick up the heavy hitters and then chip away at the backlog. This year I've been managing to do quite a bit of both. So we have a lot of PS5, PS4 stuff to get through, some Switch games as well. And then I also got some really neat figures and even a few other collectible items that I want to share today as well. So hopefully this video finds you well. Hopefully you're cozy on up on the couch, enjoying a nice piping hot cup of coffee like I am, tea or beverage of your choosing. But let's go ahead and get into it. Now the first game I want to talk about was my most anticipated game coming into this year, and that's Final Fantasy XVI. I have the deluxe edition here, rolled credits about 2 weeks ago. Took me about 75 hours to complete, and what a ride this game was. A riveting story, excellent cast of characters. I very much enjoyed kind of its high-octane, very fast-paced battle system that is far more reminiscent of something like Devil May Cry than it is anything resembling Final Fantasy of the past. But that really didn't bother me, especially as you get deeper into the game and you unlock more of those abilities. Oh my gosh, combat is so fun to master. And some of the most absurdly epic boss battles I've ever seen in a video game. I would strongly encourage anyone who has an interest in playing this game to avoid all trailers, all gameplay as much as you can. I know I stayed away from any of the state of plays, any of the trailers outside of some of its initial reveals, just because I wanted to go in knowing as little as possible, and I think that's the best way to experience Final Fantasy XVI. I think it struggles with some pacing issues towards the middle and especially towards the end. And my goodness, because I'm a completionist, the number of side quests that unlock at the very end of the game that kind of extended, it's almost like Return of the King. Like, when is this going to end? But all that being said, I thoroughly still enjoyed my time with it. Every minute that I put into this game, I think it met my expectations in most cases, exceeded them in others, particularly on the story and character front. From a music perspective, Masayoshi Soken composed the soundtrack to 16, who also did music for 14, the MMO, and it's really strong, particularly during those epic boss battles, the more emotional story beats. I feel like all the music he composed for the game really complements those moments well, but I think it remains to be seen how much the music is going to stick with me years down the line, like 13's music, 9, 7 remake, even 12 that I finished for the first time earlier this year. Like, I'm still humming some of the music from that game, and I just don't know if 16's music will stick with me down the line. But as it relates to my overall ranking of 16 compared to other Final Fantasy games, including its music, I feel like you need the passage of time to really help figure out where it's going to land in terms of its music and also just it compared to the other mainline games. But overall, again, it met my expectations in most cases and others exceeded them. Final Fantasy XVI is excellent and certainly at the top of the list from the Game of the Year contender for me so far. The next game on my list is not going to be a Game of the Year contender, and that is Forspoken on PlayStation 5. This game was met with some incredibly harsh reception when it was first released, both critically and commercially. And while I feel like a lot of that criticism is well warranted, I also feel like nowadays people either anticipate or expect there to be this AAA God of War caliber type game or this bottom of the barrel, doesn't even deserve to be published. And I feel like there should be more room for games that kind of sit comfortably right in the middle at that 6-7 range, and Forspoken is certainly one of those games. Certainly the dialogue is cringe, as many people have said. It is a poorly written game. The story is serviceable at best, forgettable at worst, but I feel like you do grow to enjoy the main protagonist Frey's story quite a bit as you get deeper into the game. And I feel like more than anything else, Forspoken just needed someone from a Santa Monica Studios or some other reputable team to come over, put on their consulting hat, and just give this team some pointers. I think it really needed some more development time because you see so many signs of promise in Forspoken. And coming away from Final Fantasy XVI, it almost feels like a beta version of that, or a tech demo of what Final Fantasy XVI will look like 3 to 4 years down the road. Almost strikingly so, especially when you see how you unlock abilities and how the combat kind of plays out in Forspoken. Obviously, it's much more polished in Final Fantasy XVI, but I feel like you see similarities between the two games, and Forspoken just needed some more time. So I can't comfortably recommend this game at full price. I'd watch gameplay, I'd watch reviews to see if it's something up your alley, but I'd wait for a sale, maybe pay $20 to $30. But yeah, Forspoken, not as bad as people say it is. It's okay. Next up is a game I'm surprised even saw the light of day, but I'm so glad it did, and that is Dead Island 2. I really enjoyed the first one when you were wandering this giant open world on a tropical island, grabbing any object you could find and using that as a weapon to kill the many zombies you run across and encounter. And Dead Island 2 is very much the same. The only major difference is that instead of being on a tropical island, it's now set in LA. And graphically, it looks so impressive. The physics and kind of hit detection of whenever you slice a zombie with a sword or hit them with a weapon, their knees coming off, their arm is flying sideways, their head is being bashed in. So if you're into first-person shooters or you ever played the first Dead Islands, I would recommend picking up the second. It's very much just more of the same, but graphically looks a lot better. A great podcast game, and was something that I also played right after finishing Final Fantasy XVI. If you know, you know. After that game, you kind of need something to kind of take the edge off a bit, play something a bit more mindless, and Dead Island 2 was perfect for that. I also picked it up on GameFly for like 20 bucks. So if you can get it for 20, 30 bucks, highly recommended. It definitely scratches that Dead Island itch. Open world, just slaying zombies. Can't beat it. Had a really good time with it. Next up was also one of my most anticipated games coming into the year, and that was a buddy 3D platformer called Clive and Wrench. I played it on the PS5. This is multi-platform. It was a kind of indie developed 3D platformer. As far as I know, this was really just developed by one person. And I've been following the development cycle for years. This person's been posting on Twitter videos of character art progression, level design, platforming mechanics, whatever it might be. But if you are a fan of your Banjo-Kazooies, Mario 64s, this game is really meant to be a love letter to that era of 3D platformers. But I can't talk about Clive and Wrench without mentioning how buggy and at times unpolished and dare I say even broken this game can be at times. However, I found it to be a lot more funny than it was game breaking, because you'd be in certain areas and you'd see either a bird or some object flying in the sky like a dragon, and instead of them flying through the sky seamlessly at 30 frames per second, it's almost like stop animation where they're moving at like 2 frames per second. And so you can't help but stop and stare, chuckle, laugh, move on, and continue to collect a heaping ton of collectibles over the course of its 11 colorful worlds in Clive and Wrench. This is also something that I'd recommend picking up for 20, 30 bucks. That's probably even too much. Maybe wait for like the $10 mark for this one. But if you're a fan of those classic 3D platformers of the N64 PS2 era, I think Clive and Wrench is super, super special, especially considering it was only developed by one person. So keep an eye out for sales for our pals Clive and Wrench. Another most anticipated game coming into the year is this indie game that I feel like is flying under the radar for a lot of people, and that's Tchia. It was a day-and-date PlayStation Plus title that released back in March. Physical editions just kind of recently released, so I had to pick up a physical copy. Also an excellent game to play after Final Fantasy XVI and even Dead Island 2. This is one of the most welcoming, comforting, relaxing, stress-relieving games I have played in recent memory, giving me quite a bit of the same feeling that I got when I played something like A Short Hike or even Animal Crossing New Horizons. You play as this young girl wandering these kind of collection of islands that's based on a place called New Caledonia, and the developers actually traveled there multiple times to really get a better sense of the culture, the food, the people, the island itself, the animals that inhabit the island, and they really wanted to translate that to this game. And it certainly shows, because the attention to detail is absolutely stunning. Outside of the story, it's about 10 chapters. I won't go into it. You can beat it in about 7 to 8 hours. There is so much to collect, find, and discover in this game, but what makes it truly unique is that this young girl there's this mechanic where you can soul jump into other animals and even inanimate objects at times for certain puzzle solving in the main story. But what makes this really fun is traversing this island then becomes just a treat in and of itself, because you might see a seagull flying throughout the sky. You can soul jump into the seagull, fly to the top of the island to get to your quest or maybe a collectible that you need to find. And then you might be walking along the beach and you see a dolphin or you see a sea turtle swimming along the shoreline. You can then soul jump into that animal and then get to another neighboring island to get to your next quest or find a collectible, or maybe swim deep into the ocean and discover one of its many secrets there. It's so unique and so cool. And as you discover the different animals and even plants and meet different people around the island, it's all kind of chronicled in this fun little unique journal in the main menu settings that is reminiscent of something like the Pokedex from Pokemon. I mean, it is mind-boggling how much detail, care, and love went into creating Tchia, and it has just a phenomenal soundtrack to complement wandering around this world. I cannot recommend it enough. It's definitely my, I use this category when talking on my podcast, a blink and you'll miss it. Like a game that's just flying under the radar. Very few people are talking about it, but more people need to be playing it. That's Tchia. Cannot recommend it enough. Go and get it on PlayStation. If you have PlayStation Plus, it should still be free. Or you, I think, can get it on Steam as well. Tchia is so, so special. Now, what is not special, and what may be the worst game I have ever played, is something that I am so sad to report is not fun. And that is the Lord of the Rings Gollum. Now, anyone that's been following my channel, anyone that listens to my podcast, knows that I will play any Lord of the Rings game. I am a Lord of the Rings super fan. I notably have multiple copies of Aragorn's Quest. I've beaten it twice, and that game's awful. But Gollum takes the cake. This game is so bad. Technically, it's an absolute mess. The moment-to-moment gameplay is offensively bad, where you're running around this prison-like area doing these strange, questionable, weird chores for all these different orcs. One moment in the game. It's almost like a Gollum day-to-day simulator. And then there's this one moment where there is a bird breeding minigame that might be the single most ridiculous and stupid thing I have ever done in a video game. Not because they literally don't tell you how to do it and it's surprisingly very involved and complex, but the fact that you do it in a Lord of the Rings Gollum game makes literally no sense. Also of note is that you're doing it for a man named the Candle Man. I'm at a loss for words how bad this game is. The platforming is absolutely atrocious.
Stairs already? We'll be very grateful when we save him from that burning light.
And perhaps what's most unfortunate about this game, as a Lord of the Rings superfan, I feel like Gollum actually had potential as its own video game, especially considering that the developers have a history of creating kind of point-and-click adventure games, and I feel like if they would have ran with that, the game would have been set as it is between the events of The Hobbit and The Fellowship of the Ring, and hearing Gollum's side, his point of view of the events of getting the ring taken from him, from Bilbo, leading up to the events of the Nazgul, going to the Shire and trying to get the ring back, could have made for a really compelling and interesting story if it was almost like a Telltale's Walking Dead type of story. But instead, we've gotten a sad, unfortunate, sad excuse for a video game, something that I cannot confidently recommend to anyone, even fellow jank enthusiasts like myself, even people that are die-hard Lord of the Rings fans. Stay clear of Lord of the Rings Gollum. It is arguably the worst video game I have ever played. I am 5 chapters of 10 through it, and I honestly don't know if I can make it through. It is that bad. So, yeah, Gollum, you deserve better, buddy. Alright, shifting gears just a little bit from the PlayStation 5 stuff, I have a couple of Switch games that I wanted to talk through. But before I do that, I do want to mention that I traded in a few games a couple weeks ago, including Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Respawn Entertainment's follow-up to Jedi Fallen Order, which was actually my 2019 game of the year. I really loved Fallen Order. Survivor was good. It was a great follow-up to that first game, but I didn't like it quite as much. I felt like a lot of the narrative and story was predictable, and I just didn't really feel like it came together as well and was as complete in a package as that first game. But still enjoyed my time with it. Not enough to keep the copy, so I got some good trading credit for it. Traded in a few other things as well, and I got these next two games for $5 total, which was a great deal. The first game is Disney Illusion Island, a beautiful little 2D platformer, kind of Metroidvania type of game that I had first saw, I believe, in a Nintendo Direct, and it certainly caught my eye because I'm a big Disney fan. The majority of my PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 collection is a bunch of licensed 3D platformers based on Disney films, if you can believe it or not. So definitely wanted to take a look at Disney Illusion Island when it first came out, and for basically $2.50, splitting the price between the next two games, it was definitely worth it. I'm about 2 to 3 hours into the game so far, and I've been pleasantly surprised. This is another game that I think is going to fly under the radar for a lot of people. Couple things that have surprised me so far has just been the music. It's a fully orchestrated score to complement the game. You can play with 2 to 3 other friends, local co-op. The cutscenes are something right out of a cartoon. It's really beautiful. And while the game is a bit simple, it's easy. The boss battles really aren't going to give you any trouble. Every once in a while, it's nice to kind of put stuff like Hollow Knight and Celeste in the back burner and play something like Disney Illusion Island that is just really warm and inviting, kind of a breeze to get through. If you want 100% the game, which I would certainly recommend because it's not too terribly challenging to find all the hidden collectibles, it's going to run you 15 to 20 hours. If you just want to breeze through the main story itself, maybe for like 6 to 12 hours, depending on your play style. But Disney Illusion Island is something really special. If you like Metroidvania 2D platformers, I definitely consider giving it a look. Maybe wait for a price drop, maybe wait for it to hit that $20, $30 price tag instead of the retail $40 price, but I certainly have no regrets so far. Very much looking forward to continue playing this game here in the next couple weeks. The other game I picked up alongside Disney Illusion Island was Pikmin 4. I've not played a game in this series before, but I've heard nothing but good things. I know Miyamoto has a tremendous amount of pride with this series, and I figured 4 was the perfect entry point because, one, it's gotten glowing reviews, it's selling incredibly well, and I forget the name of this little dog, but he looks so dang cute. Once we saw the more recent kind of gameplay demo at a Nintendo Direct, and we saw the Pikmin picking up that Game Boy Advance SP and kind of moving it around the level to help solve a puzzle, I'm like, all right, game over. I'm picking up Pikmin 4. This game just looks far too adorable to pass up. So I'm also looking forward to getting into this, hopefully in the next couple weeks as well, before the fall rush of Starfield, Assassin's Creed Mirage, Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2. Fall's packed, people, and I think Pikmin 4 will be a nice palate cleanser, especially around spooky season, so looking forward to playing that. The other thing that I picked up shortly after I came back from Japan, if you didn't know, I went to Japan earlier this year with my wife. We were there for 2 weeks. It was a life-changing experience. It was an incredible trip. I'm still editing behind the scenes, some footage, chronicling my game shopping and just the overall experience itself, so hoping to get those videos out at some point later this year. But if you haven't watched my Japan pickups video, you won't know that I went a little Kirby collecting crazy, especially when I was hitting it big on the Crane games and I got a number of Kirby plush dolls. So naturally, when I came back from Japan, because I've already played Kirby in the Forgotten Land, I wanted to pick up Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, the remaster of the Wii game of the same name. I love playing me a good 2D side-scrolling Kirby game. Like Disney Illusion Island, never gives you much trouble in the way of difficulty, but sometimes you just need to pick up those cozy Kirby platforming games because they're just overwhelming with happiness and just, again, a joy to play. So looking forward to hopefully getting to this later this fall as well. The next trio of games I'll go through relatively quickly, but earlier this year when PlayStation VR 2 came out, I was certainly interested, but not for the asking price, and also because PlayStation hasn't had a great track record of supporting VR with compelling software. However, there was a nice bundle of games for the first PlayStation VR that I was interested in playing, so I got a great deal on eBay with the headset, 2 of the wand controllers, and I think 1 or 2 games, and then I picked up some of these separately. The first of which is, I think, still the best game on PlayStation VR and the one that's most deserving of buying the technology or the headset, and that is Astrobot Rescue Mission. I am Astrobot's biggest fan, especially when it comes to Astro's Playroom on the PlayStation 5. Anytime someone says they're getting a PlayStation 5, I get over the moon excited and say the first thing you do when you get that is play Astro's Playroom, because it's such a great celebration for PlayStation's history. It's also just an excellent 3D platformer, and Astro is so dang cute and just a fun mascot little 3D platforming character. And fortunately, Rescue Mission has not disappointed. When I put on that headset, it was very much like playing the 3DS for the first time. Like, seeing is believing, right? Like, you can't market VR technology or even the 3DS 3D feature. Like, you have to see it for yourself and hold that 3DS, wear that VR headset, and it really was like an out-of-body experience when I put that headset on for the first time. It was like using the Wiimote for the first time, or again, seeing the 3DS screen for the first time. I have not been disappointed. This is a terrific 3D platformer. I hope we see more Astrobot in the future. Because I don't want to pay the price for VR2, I hope it's just for the PlayStation 5 itself, but we need to see more Astrobot in our future because he's just so dang cute, and this game is really, really fun. So I've been enjoying my time with that. Next up, if you saw my PlayStation 4 Top 25 list, I'd highly encourage you to watch those videos if you haven't. You'll know that I am a very big fan of Everybody's Golf, or the Hot Shots Golf series, so I had to pick up this game, and this is exactly what I want it to be. It is kind of like playing Wii Golf, but with a VR headset, and with the Everybody's Golf kind of character designs and music and all of that good stuff. So I put lots of time into this, really enjoying that, and then I think the maybe 6th time I've bought this game, we had to get Skyrim in VR as well, which also did not disappoint. It was so mind-boggling to have that headset on and play through that introductory sequence in Skyrim, the dragon flying over, and then when you leave the city and you pull out a bow and arrow, or you're swinging your sword, or just looking around the world was just, again, an out-of-body experience. I don't know how else to describe it. It's difficult to explain unless you've worn that headset and played this game yourself in VR. It is so cool, and I'm looking forward to playing more of these games later this fall and beyond. There's a couple of other games that I want to check out for VR, particularly Moss, and I wouldn't mind punishing myself and playing the opening hours of Resident Evil 7 because I'm a huge fan of that game. We'll see. But I've also been fortunate to discover that I haven't gotten any kind of motion sickness playing VR. I was playing Skyrim and Everybody's Golf for 2, 3, 4 hours at a time, and I really wasn't struggling or getting nauseous and things like that. So very fortunate in that regard to get all of those games and the headset for about $150. That was a great asking price for me, and I'll probably do the same in 5 years from now, pick up VR2, and hopefully there's some compelling software there as well. Now, the next bundle of games I'll run through relatively quickly because I haven't put a tremendous amount of time into any of these, but I picked up most of them through GameFly. Again, I cannot recommend or shout out GameFly enough when they have their used game blowout sales. You are getting minty fresh, nearly brand new copies, basically without the shrink wrap. And for games that released 2-3 months prior, you're getting for $25, $30, $40. When again, they retailed for $70 just a few months prior. So cannot recommend GameFly enough. Follow Wario64 on X, Twitter, whatever disaster that's become. First up, we have One Piece World Seeker. I actually picked this up on eBay for about $10. It's also on sale right now on the PSN store digitally for about $10. I've been wanting to get into One Piece, but it is it is a lot to get into just because there are so many episodes, but I've had a number of coworkers. My brother-in-law is really deep into the anime now, among many people who have nothing but good things to say about the anime. So I want to get into it, but I feel like a nice gateway into watching the show itself would be potentially playing a game based on the anime. And World Seeker, when looking at kind of like the best One Piece games, really isn't held in the highest of regard, but it is a really nice open world action RPG. Honestly, graphically looks really, really nice. It reminded me quite a bit of Dragon Quest XI, just how vibrant and colorful the world is itself. You use Luffy's hand, Luffy, I think it's Luffy, sorry. You're gonna have to forgive me because I'm such a noob when it comes to One Piece, but he uses his extending hand as basically like a hook shot to basically navigate around the city, which is really neat. And it's kind of just a bare bones beat 'em up action RPG, and not too terribly long. You can beat this in about 15 to 20 hours. And as far as I know, kind of follows one of the many story arcs of the anime, but seemed like a great introduction point for me to really kind of push me over the edge to start watching the anime. Next up, we have Need for Speed Unbound. I don't think I played a Need for Speed game since Carbon on the Xbox 360, and beyond that it was probably Underground 2 on the PlayStation 2. But I've always loved these more arcade type racing games, never really been into Gran Turismo and stuff like that, but Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition on PS2, Need for Speed Underground, Hot Pursuit, those types of games I always enjoyed growing up, and Unbound really drew me in with its kind of cel shading graphical style, and it honestly just looked like a refreshingly fun take on the arcade racing style. And again, I haven't played a Need for Speed game in years, and I got this one on GameFly for I think 15, maybe 20 bucks as well. So looking forward to playing this one soon as well. Next, we have a game that I expect very few people have heard of, and that is Wanted Dead. I'd be lying if the gameplay itself was the first thing that drew me in. It was really this pink cover and that font that I was like, what is this game? I've never heard of this. And if you look up gameplay, if you look up reviews, it has not gotten glowing reviews, but it really just reminds me of the dime a dozen games we got during the PS3, 360 era, like those third-person action games like Wet, Enslaved Odyssey to the West, Majin the Forsaken Kingdom, games that often kind of surfaced in hidden gem type videos of that console generation. Wanted Dead seems to fit into that category. However, jank seems to be an apt description of this because the overall combat and fighting mechanics seem to be relatively unpolished, but I don't know. Watching gameplay, I was certainly intrigued. I'm looking forward to giving this one a try, and I just honestly, look at that box art. It just looked so inviting. I couldn't pass that up. And I think this was like also $10 or $15 on GameFly, so for next to nothing, really. I'm looking forward to giving that one a try. And these last two games, also coming away from Japan, and coming into this year, I kind of had a backlog goal for myself of getting into a series that I hadn't played before. Originally, I was thinking about Metal Gear Solid because, spoiler alert, I've never played a Metal Gear Solid game to completion anyways. But I think the series that is looking far more enticing for me at this point is the Yakuza series. And so I picked up Like a Dragon Ishin, I believe is how you pronounce that, and then Yakuza Like a Dragon, which I've heard nothing but good things about. I believe this came out in 2020, and it was in many of my friends' Game of the Year top 10 list. This game just looks super goofy, over the top, and really up my alley, especially as you get to explore a lot of Japan and get to experience a lot of the culture that I got to experience firsthand earlier this year. I'm craving more of it. I already miss Japan, particularly Osaka and Kyoto. The food, the people, everything about it. And so, while Like a Dragon isn't necessarily being physically present in Japan, I think it'll certainly scratch that itch. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting around to playing this, maybe around November, December, when things start to kind of slow down with the new releases. But I picked up both of those, I think, for $20 a piece as well. So great deal on those. Now, those are most of my video game pickups to this point in the year. There were some things I didn't mention, like Resident Evil 4 Remake, because I didn't really think they needed an extra shout out. But I especially wanted to highlight stuff like Tchia, Disney Illusion Island, Clive and Wrench, games that many people are probably not talking about, or not talking about as much as I think they probably should. So with all that being said, let's highlight some of the figure pickups that I've gotten to this point in the year. The first of which is something that I had pre-ordered well over a year ago, I think at this point, through the Good Smile company, if I'm not mistaken, and that is this wonderful little Klonoa and Hupo figure here. I'll try and unbox this and get kind of a B-roll look of this guy on the shelf, especially back there with my Journey Wandering Traveler figure that I also got from the Good Smile company many moons ago. But I've had nothing but good experience with this company in the past, and these figures, this brand of figures in particular, seem to be of utmost quality. So really excited and thrilled to have this in my collection, especially because I played the Fantasy Reverie series. I think it's Fantasy Reverie series, which was the remake collection of both Klonoa 1 and 2 released last year. That was one of my top 10 games of the year. It was such a treat to replay those beautiful platformers on the PS1 and PS2 respectively. And so to have a figure to kind of represent one of my favorite platforming series is really pretty cool. So really thrilled to have gotten that. And then next, if you've been following my channel, my podcast for the past 2 years, you'll know that I've kind of had this reawakening, falling in love with the Assassin's Creed series again, especially last year when I played through like 6 Assassin's Creed games. It was kind of stupid actually, but I got this Ezio Auditore figure from eBay. I got him for, he was actually an auction. No one bid on him except for me, which was to my benefit, of course. And I got him for about $30. So really great deal, really nice figure. I think I might need to carve out one of the shelving cubbies over there to highlight the Assassin's Creed series, because it's become one of my franchises. No shame, people. Play what you love, all right? People probably already clicking out of this video because I mentioned an Assassin's Creed game, but you know what? Play what you love. Now, last but certainly not least, I want to share something that very few people are probably collecting, let alone mentioning in pickups videos, but growing up, I loved the Game Informer magazine that you got through your, GameStop subscription service or PowerUp rewards card membership. But in recent years, Game Informer has been going above and beyond with their kind of cover designs that typically highlight their main cover story for one particular game for that month. And so what I want to do eventually, probably not in time for a game room tour, is I want to frame some of my favorite magazines. And so I've been kind of going out of my way, searching eBay and trying to find really nice condition copies for games that I want to highlight, or covers that I want to highlight and frame somewhere in the game room here. I'm leaving some space in certain areas so I can be a bit flexible with that. So these two I got, I think, sometime last year. The first of which is the cover for Kena Bridge of Spirits. That was my game of the year in 2021. Absolutely loved this game. Not a game of the year, but certainly one I thoroughly enjoyed, and that is Miles Morales, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. I just love that cover so much. It looks so nice. And then these next two I thought were really nice too, and the cool thing about Game Informer magazines is you can pick those up for like $4 plus shipping, because no one's really collecting them. They're not like a hot commodity item, like Nintendo Power, or some of those other more sought-after magazines might be from the late 90s, early 2000s, which is kind of neat. But this next one, I'm not sure if I'd frame this one or not. We'll see. But 2018 God of War, I just love the cover art with Kratos and Atreus kind of fending off an army of bad guys there. And then the last one, this is just so dang cool. It is the top 100 RPGs of all time special issue that Game Informer did not too terribly long ago, basically highlighting their top 100 RPGs. And you can see you have Chrono there. You have Cloud. I'm going to begin to try and guess all of the different things because I can't really see it that well. But just a really beautiful cover, kind of celebrating and highlighting RPGs. So I thought that would be a really neat issue to kind of highlight somewhere here in the game room in frame. So not sure when I'm going to get around to framing those and hanging them up, but I thought it'd be a really cool way to kind of distinguish my game room, but also celebrate some of my favorite games and kind of bring attention to them again somewhere in the game room. But that is everything I wanted to share for this kind of mid-year check-in 2023 pickups. We got some great PlayStation 5 and 4 stuff, some nice Switch titles, couple cool figures in those Game Informer magazines. So hopefully you found a couple recommendations over the course of this video, but I'd also strongly recommend and encourage you to leave a comment below. Let me know, what are some of your highlight pickups over the course of this year so far? What are some of your favorite 2023 games? I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. It's been such a joy to get behind the camera and be recording videos here on YouTube with a greater frequency than I have in the past. So I really want to just thank everyone who has recently subscribed, been watching my videos, commenting, liking, whatever it might be. You have no idea how much I appreciate that. So I'll end the video by asking you to please, like this video, consider sharing it with others. More than anything, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. All right. But until next time, please look forward to my next video, which will be my 200th here on YouTube, giving you a grand tour of my game room. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it.